This is just a regular kid that you guys named Isaac. He was just going about a normal day when suddenly something fell from the sky and hit him on the head. Picking it up, he wasn't sure what it was, but once he pressed a button, his entire life changed. What Isaac doesn't know is that he stumbled across a working time machine, and in this video he's going to be going on an adventure through thousands of years worth of historical battles, from cavemen to Vikings to knights, all in an attempt to make it back to the present day. Isaac first found himself plummeting to the ground about 5,000 years ago. He turned around and found himself surrounded by angry cavemen who chased him around until he scrambled to safety on top of their cave. Looking around to find his time machine to make a swift exit, he spots that it's landed way off in the distance, but someone has got there first. This saber-toothed tiger has plagued the local cavemen, stealing all of their prey and even some of their friends. So Isaac suggested they team up and hunt down the creature. The cavemen discuss this and decide to help Isaac, tossing him up a spear and hurrying off in pursuit of the saber-tooth. They all crouch around behind these bushes, ready to ambush their prey, and Isaac, being the expert hunter he is, throws his spear through the air and it sails directly into its target. They all rejoice. The cavemen have rid themselves of their foe, and of course Isaac has his time machine back. He presses the button and sails off towards what he hopes will be a return to civilization. And whilst he's made it a few thousand years into the future, he hasn't gone far enough, and whilst he's hurtling towards the ground, I bought this giant Viking village set as we're in the year 700 AD, and he finds himself coming face to face with this Viking settlement. We built the setup in 3 large sections, the first of which being a small blacksmith area with a forge, the second is this giant town hall in the center, and the third is the small watchtower with a bridge leaning over to another building. This set is absolutely amazing and kind of blew me away. But as Isaac lands, this time the time machine is nowhere to be seen. He spends months looking all over the village, through every box, in this abandoned mine, and even underwater, but he can't find the time machine anywhere, until one day he visits this old blind man that the villagers named the Seer. The Seer told him that what he was looking for was in the distant land of Francia. So Isaac spent the next few weeks convincing all of his Viking friends to head across the sea and raid the French settlement. They gather their supplies, however this is definitely not enough Vikings to form a raiding party, so I built up a giant army for them, using various different Vikings that have gathered from different kingdoms, all with different outfits, weapons, and shields. I may have gone a bit overboard with how many Vikings I made, but they're going to need lots of numbers and an epic leader like this guy with the hatchet to lead them on such a massive quest. I then transformed this set from the recent Thor movie into a Viking longboat, removing the goats, adding a mast with a sail, threading a rope between the bow, mast, and hut, and our Viking ship was ready to go. I then loaded up my Viking army and headed out onto the open ocean. After weeks of seasickness, they finally made it to the French settlement. For this, I built up a small fort with stone walls at the base and wooden pillars on top. I built a gatehouse with stairs leading up, adding a small thatched roof, a few crates with weapons and other treasures inside, including one with a treasure that Isaac will definitely be interested in, finishing the outside with a few bits of shrubbery and foliage, and the fort was ready to be attacked by our Vikings. Speaking of which, we built up our Viking army, and they look pretty formidable outside of the fortress. I've got to say, I don't think the French stand a chance. As the Vikings swarmed towards the French settlement, the king was pretty terrified, but couldn't do much to stop the fearsome wrath of these Vikings, and they soon conquered the settlement, captured the king, and whilst the other Vikings were celebrating, Isaac was drawn to this chest. Opening it, he found a lot of treasure which he gave to the Vikings, keeping one small piece for himself before reaching back in and finding the time machine. Pressing the button, he would fly a few hundred years into the future, finding himself landing on this old medieval street. Whilst looking around to try and gauge where he was, before he could even think about using the time machine, he was captured by some guards, who were rounding up every able-bodied young man as they were about to venture into a giant battle against their biggest foes, the Lion Knights. The guards escorted him off to the blacksmith, who fashioned him a fresh spear and a set of armor ready for battle. Speaking of the battle, I gathered a bunch of Black Falcon torsos ready to form an army around Isaac. So to begin with, I built up 50 spearmen with a variety of different heads and helmets, adding 2 different types of spears and a bunch of flags and banners. Then using the archer from the recent CMF, I built up 10 Black Falcon archers with various different hoods and capes, adding bows to each of them. In front of them, to finish the army off, I went with not 1 but 30 heavy knights, each with different flags, weapons, spears, shields, swords, helmets, and other accessories. These guys look pretty menacing. Adding them to the army, all that was left was a space in front for our leaders. I firstly made this king with his trusty steed, adding his son, the prince, flanking him, as well as guards on either side, and then a few noblemen from different houses to join the cause as well. And with that, our Falcon army featuring Isaac was ready to go. Now turning to their foes, the Lion Knights, I grabbed a ton of different bodies again from Pick-a-Brick. However, with these guys, there's one thing you have to change, and that's the hands. I had to take off and replace nearly 100 pairs of yellow hands, swapping them out for flesh-toned and black hands depending on where in the army they were fitting. But with them done, I could then build a similar army, starting with the spearmen, again going with 50, adding a few banners from the Lion Knight castle. In front of them I used various different chainmail torsos to make 10 archers, giving some of them crossbows and even a couple of longbows. Again, to round off the army, I built 30 more knights. I was missing a few torsos, so I used a few plain red ones with blue arms and covered them with armor, and I feel like they fill in the ranks pretty nicely. Adding helmets and various different weapons again to them, my knights were complete, and all I was left with was the cavalry. Beginning with the queen from the Lion Knight's castle, I added a king next to her, who is actually a really nice and accurate King Henry V minifigure, but he'll fit right in with this army. with some personal bodyguards next to them, some spearmen, and finally bannermen from different allied houses on the ends. I've got to say I love the way these armies look. They turned out so well and just look so good in such high quantity with such variety. But enough standing around, it's time for them to meet and face off in the field of battle. Once I had them face to face, I filled in some extra plant work around the edges to add some detail, and our armies were ready to clash swords. The cavalries charged at each other, with multiple men being thrown from their horses and knights being drawn into the fight. As the Pullmans advanced, the bowmen sat back and fired volleys of arrows over their own forces into the opposition. A stalemate looked to be ensuing, until the crafty Isaac had an idea. He gathered a small band of spearmen and led them round on a stealth attack, sneaking through bushes and forming a quick strong position with the shield wall, allowing Isaac to sneak down the middle, leap into the air and tackle the king off of his horse. With the king slain, the lions retreated and the black falcons celebrated their victory. Once they were back at the castle, the king found Isaac and commended him on his bravery, offering him one wish as his reward. Of course, Isaac knew exactly what to wish for and was reunited with his time machine, and he hurtled into the future, leaving his medieval friends behind. Plummeting to the ground, he found himself in the middle of the Napoleonic Wars in the year 1810. But how did we create this battle? Well, to start with, we had to pick minifigures that would fit the Napoleonic War, and so I started with the Series 23 minifigure. Inside we found the Nutcracker. Putting him together, I swapped out his head, changing his hat for this more fitting one, adding some flesh-coloured hands, and giving him a musket, and our first British soldier was ready. Now, of course, I didn't want to just create one. I opened a bunch of these and created a giant army, beginning with a few swordsmen and ending with the riflemen, before creating a leader, using a rubber band as a sheath for his sword, and adding a different, slightly more red hat and musket in his hand. Now for the French, I used this dark blue torso, again creating 4 swordsmen with 6 men with muskets, before creating the man himself, Napoleon. For him, I used this awesome hat that really matched his outfit, with some dual molded legs, and again a musket. And one of the most common pieces of weaponry for this era was the cannon, so I built one of those as well. And with that, I had 2 fantastic looking British and French armies, and now it's time to set up the battle. I built up a basic area with a road running down the centre and some stone walls surrounding different areas of farmland, beginning with this one in the corner where I created some trees using this new fern piece in dark and regular green. I'm really happy with the way that section came out. Next to it, I built a small cornfield. Across the road I added some plants, and then to the left a small pig pen, and our battle was ready to be staged. We're going to have the French coming along the road here with the British attacking them, so I piled in all my French minifigures on the road, scattering formation, and then placed the British soldiers peeking out over the walls, ambushing the French, catching them off guard, hopping over the walls and charging at their foe. This might be my favourite mock from this whole video. I really had fun building the minifigures and I think it came out really nicely. But now here comes Isaac, landing right smack bang in the middle of the battle, with his time machine flying off into the pig pen. Not wanting to be shot, he quickly crawled across the floor, hopped over the wall and dived onto his time machine, pressing the button and flying off into the future once again. He landed somewhere in France in 1918, and so I built up this small area of battlefield with a trench. This definitely wasn't from another video I did recently where I built Mimban from Star Wars, but it all worked pretty well. We have some craters and some bomb sites and a nice trench on the side. I even added some different sandbags using these small 1x2 pieces for extra cover. With our battlefield ready, the British are going to be sat in the trench, on their last legs, about to be overrun. I then built up their adversaries, the Germans, with a variety of different weaponry and minifigures. I firstly added in a sniper to the back here, followed by an officer with a pistol charging towards the trench. I added in a slumped over body which had already been shot by the British, and another man taking cover in the trench. This guy here has a more automatic rifle, and again we have another German fatality over on the sandbags. I then followed this up by building a German plane that we got in one of the Indiana Jones sets, and our battle was ready. Yes, this is a bit of an amalgamation between World War I and World War II, but let's just go with it. But wait, who's that in the middle of the battle? It's Isaac. He's landed right in the centre. He's fallen within the German forces, but unluckily for him, his time machine has landed right over the other side of the trenches, so he's going to have to scramble his way through as bullets fly past his head, sliding in and out of craters, and finally hurtling over the trench to his time machine. And with that last press of the button, he flies back to present day, finally making it home to safety, suddenly remembering the Viking coin that he stashed away, which he traded in and became the richest kid in town. So if you enjoyed following Isaac's journey, make sure to leave a like and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Thank you for 100,000 subscribers, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.